Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. This next discussion is probably going to pique your interest. We are speaking with author Kalifa Oliver about a book called I Think I Love My Job. Good morning, Kalifa, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us on the show this morning. Kalifa, we have to dive straight into the conversation of what inspired you to write a book titled I Think I Love My Job.
Usually when you think about jobs and the way people interact with work these days, usually you don't realize how much you like your job until you're really experiencing like enjoyment of it. And so generally, most people talk about how much they hate their jobs and they dislike their jobs. And so for me, it was really a journey of understanding how do you create jobs that people can actually have that thought when you ask them, do you like your job? And they can truly and genuinely answer, I think I love my job. And so it was a matter of what is data, what is the analytics, what is the experience that organizations really need to create.
Definitely there, especially you hit the nail on the head with what organizations need to create. Now, what message do you want readers to take away from this book?
That the employee experience that we always talk about is not a feeling, right? It is something that is provided by organizations. So all the feelings we get, including happiness, satisfaction, those are things that come from us. But the actual experience is created by organizations with intention. It takes data, it takes investments, and that organizations do have the power in their hands to actually create better experiences. And work can be enjoyed without all of the need for people to constantly feel like they are happy every single day, right? Because happiness is not the center of work. It is being set up for success. And if you do not feel set up for success, or you as an organization is not providing an experience where your employees feel set up for success, then you are the problem, not the employee.
I think you are definitely speaking to many people today. Kalifa, you mentioned experiences. Let's speak about your experience in the corporate world and how it contributed and drove you to pen this book.
Yeah, so I have a lot of experiences with large companies. So I've worked for companies like Walmart, Wells Fargo, Stanley Black and Decker. I've been a consultant for large companies, small companies, startups. And one of the things I've always tried to do is understand how do we take employee data and people data, do analytics, and then apply it to work using more of a people-centered approach rather than a transactional approach, which is what we think about when we think of HR, right? HR is a transaction. It is payroll. It is employee relations, right? It is hiring and firing. But how do you people center that design? And I've found that companies often are terrible at it, just really bad at it. And even in my experiences, I have experienced where I didn't feel included. I did not feel heard. And a big part of what I do is what we call employee listening, where we find ways to understand the employee voice to better make decisions. I myself went into an experience where, even as an executive, I was laid off from a job. And this was 4 months after promotion. And I felt destroyed. I realized in that moment that we have to talk about these things better because I research these things, I know these things, I build these things. But when my moment really came, I was a mess. I was a mess. I felt like I'd lost myself. And then I picked myself up and it happened again. And then I was like, you know what? We need to talk about it because then I'd have a lot of internal conversations and people were experiencing work with that same level of fear. And then I was like, you know what? Pen to paper. Let's tell organizations how to create these experiences because some generally don't know how to do it properly. And let's tell employees what to look for when they're trying to understand work and how work is changing.
You've definitely touched many hearts there, especially mentioning, of course, layoffs. We see thousands of layoffs happen with many companies during different quarters, and it leaves people in a state of devastation. So being able to appreciate what they have and know how to navigate moving forward is definitely something that we can emotionally connect to. Now, something that we don't necessarily, we're not all able to connect is the academic insight and the real world stories. So how are you able to balance these two elements in your book and create such a compelling narrative?
So one of the things I tried to do when I was writing the book is focus on authenticity, right? These experiences I've genuinely have. I've been in the boardroom, as I say in the book, and sometimes I've had to sit outside the door, right? And so I've experienced it from multiple sides, and I've seen sides of work that are good, bad, and very, very ugly, right? And I've seen how people are talked about in a boardroom, and I've seen how people are celebrated in a good environment. I've seen what toxic work environments do. And so one of the things I have tried to do is take that experience and pair it with my background in people analytics and in industrial organizational psychology and data. I borrow a lot from consumer analytics, where you realize that people are seen as human when they're consumers. It's the reason why if I go on Instagram and I scroll looking for a purple dress and my friend who's sitting down next to me is searching for an orange dress, we get personalized results all the time. And then when I search, it's a personalized ads because you recognize that I'm a human and I'm different and I'm not a monolith. And so taking those lessons about personalization and humanization and really people centering designing, you take that academic approach and then you take that human centered experience and you marry them together and you can create brilliant experiences for everybody. And you don't have to, as a business, lose money to do it. That's the problem. It's not one or the other. Humans are a big part of why you're making money. So lean into them as an investment rather than a liability.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned people-centered design, and that is a key concept that is in your book. But why would you say that it is so important to the transformation of work culture?
Because people are important and people are complex and people are annoying. So every time you design, you need to ask yourself, how will a decision that you make impact whatever segment of the population that you're thinking of? So let's say you have return to work policies or return to office policies. How does that affect people who are differently abled or disabled, right? How does that affect it? Do you need this policy? When you're hiring people and you're trying to solve an issue and you change a process, how does that affect different groups? What people centered design does is create context for decisions at the beginning of the time the decision is being made. So you're not scrambling after to make that decision. It allows you to look at data and context and really view work as a human thing rather than this extra, like, what do you call monkey on somebody's back and this thing that they just have to do because you told them to. There's a word for what that is, and there was emancipation from that a long time.
Definitely. Olivia, I mean, Khalifa, rather, my apologies. You're definitely speaking the facts this morning, so I can only imagine the gems that are going to be in your book. Now, you are also, of course, a consultant and an advisor. In your experience, what would you say are some of the common challenges that you see organizations face when it comes to trying their best to improve their employee experience?
I think one of them is they don't listen enough. They don't create enough data, right? They think that if they treat people data the same as other data, like say if I was in a bank and I'm treating it the way I do financial or economic analysis, it's the same. It's not. The first issue is recognizing that people data has to be treated different. When somebody applies for your job, they're often covered by laws and they could win a lawsuit if you found discriminating against them, right? When people are fired, when people get laid off, you affect multiple networks of people, both the people who have been laid off or fired and the people who are still in. So you can't make the decisions that you make in a singular context when it comes to people data, which is a big thing. The other thing is people often collect a lot of data, and I know I'm probably preaching to a lot of people here. Companies will ask you to take an annual survey, which, that's one of the things I do, and then they do absolutely nothing with it. You never find out what happened with it. And so what I call that is inaction fatigue. So it's like if I go home and my husband asks me, what do I want to eat for dinner? And I say Chinese, and he brings home pizza, and he does it again and again. I am not going to answer anymore. I'm not going to answer because you're showing me that you don't actually care about how I feel. And so those are some of the challenges. Another challenge is a lot of leaders, unfortunately, including, people who have levels like my own, believe we already know what things are. And so it's about really finding the leadership humility to recognize that you don't know what you don't know, and you have to be open to hearing it through the multiple different channels, and ways to actually listen. And sometimes listening is not about simply asking a survey. Listening is about understanding the movement, seeing the data, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Keyword there, listening. Something that is so important to, I wouldn't say many, I'll say all employees, especially when it comes to their position and what they would like to experience in the future coming from and feeling valued, which is so important. Now, I know there's a lot of focus on leadership in your book, but what about those who do feel stuck in their job? Are they able to read your book and perhaps use your data, your insights to revolutionize their experience at work?
Yes. So there are two things I tell people. Sometimes you will read the book and you will realize that all of these things are missing and your leadership is unable or unwilling to do the thing, right? And it is okay to finally make the decision as long as you can to leave, especially if you do not have the power to influence the decisions, right? The other thing is, if you have to stay, you learn in the book what do you need to adjust or look for? What can you find in the organization to help create support? And then look for the little things that you might be able to assist with, right? Things like that you might want to look for. Now, if you are in a position, and you don't have to be like an executive leader in the organization, you might be a manager, you might manage a team of two, and you can learn what does that mean in terms of talent planning, executive planning, performance management. What does it mean in your day-to-day work, in just checking in on your employees, on well-being, on diversity and inclusion? You can make these small changes and learn to celebrate these small wins up until the time that you think that it's no longer a tenable situation for you. The one
Yeah.
thing I want people to take away, if you're not a leader, is you do have options, which is up to and including walking away. If for you cannot absolutely say, I think I love my job.
Yeah, and definitely food for thought and something again that many in corporate life experience. Now, what about those who feel that they are stuck in their job? Do you have any advice that you could share with them?
I'll give a quick example of something that happened this week at Wells Fargo. There was a lady who was dead at her desk for 4 days and nobody knew,
Yeah.
right? What kind of experience was she having? Right? That nobody knew that she died for 4 days at work, right? And so for people who feel stuck, that's the type of environment we're talking about. It's probably toxic and you're stuck. There are ways to deal with it. One of them is to adjust your input, right? You can take the PTO,
Yep.
protect your well being. Those are things that you can do, that those are benefits that are provided to you, right? A lot of times there are other people who feel the same way you do. And often it's about connecting with people outside of the job. And then the other thing, which I want to tell people when they feel stuck, is this. Society, we have created a situation where work has become our lives and our identities. And you can take your identity and recognize that happiness does not have to exist in work. You can find happiness outside. You could find happiness in your hobbies. You could find happiness with your cat, with your dog, with your kids. You can find happiness outside. And sometimes adjusting your input means setting boundaries and recognizing that your happiness does not need to come from work. Your satisfaction and your being set up for success can, but your happiness, your joy, does not have to come from there. And that can help you feel unstuck because, yeah, that identity is what often makes people feel traumatized and stuck at work.
Definitely does. Thank you. That was beautiful, Khalifa. Khalifa, before we end our conversation this morning, where can we get your book?
So I am excited that it is being sold at Paper Based Bookshop on Alcazar Street in St. Clair. So I'm very happy about that. Otherwise, it is found on all online platforms, including Amazon, and it can be found on audiobook, ebook, and regular paperback and hardback. Paperback will be available in November, but right now it's in hardback online.
Excellent. Well, Khalifa, thank you so much for joining us. Really looking forward to reading your book and knowing that you are going to continue to transform lives in the corporate space and outside as well. Have an excellent day.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bye.
Kalifa joining us this morning, author of an incredible book called I Think I Love My Job. We're going to talk about that and a little bit more when we come back after this break.